Good morning all and welcome to the ordinary meeting of Council for the 20th of October 2021. I'll now call the meeting open at 9:01am and in doing so welcome councillors, our staff and Pastor Glenn Von Hoff who's with us today. Thank you for joining us, Glenn. It's now my pleasure to, before we can move on to Glenn, do we have any requests for leave of absence? Any apologies? No, okay. I'll now move. Glenn, we'd now like to invite you to come up to the lectern and deliver the opening prayers. Thank you very much.
Oh, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here again for the Mayor and the councillors and staff. It's a pleasure to be here representing the ministers of the South Burnett. I was reading through my Bible the other day, and of course the New Testament's in Greek, and I came across a word called homothermodon. I thought, what on earth does that mean? It's quite a mouthful, but what it means in English is with one mind, with one accord, with one passion. And I thought, what a great word for this council. To work together with one mind, one accord and one passion. And I thought, what else can I find that might be inspiring? So I went into the philosophers and I found a few that are interesting. When it is obvious that goals can't be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the way you're getting there. In other words, if you've got a goal that's worthwhile pursuing and you can't get there the way you're going, think of another way. That's by Confucius. What the superior man seeks is in himself. What the small man seeks is in others. In other words, make up your own mind. I like this one. If they spit at you behind your back, it means that you're ahead of them. And I like that. But you know, you'll always get that. No matter what happens in life, no matter what you do and how you try to please people, there will always be people who pull you down. And the next one goes on the same vein. There's only one way to avoid criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. If you get up and fight for what's right, you'll always get criticism. That's by Aristotle, by the way. This is by Mahatma Gandhi. A no uttered from deepest conviction is better than a yes uttered to please or to avoid trouble. Sometimes we do things to avoid trouble or to please someone, but it's not the truth. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way, from Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And I think a lot of the things you do are small, but they add up. They add up and they're important. William Shakespeare said this, love all, trust a few, and do wrong to no one. That's pretty good advice. Confucius said, a man who has committed a mistake and doesn't correct it is committing another mistake. That's very true, isn't it? If you do something wrong, you make a mistake, admit it. And I admit my mistakes to my wife every day. And last, by the Dalai Lama, do not let the behaviour of others destroy your inner peace. If you've got peace about what you're doing, don't let anyone destroy that by their criticism. These are all wise words. You know, the greatest philosopher was God himself. And in Luke 6:31 in the Bible, he said this, do to others as you would have them do to you. That's the golden rule. It comes from the Bible. It's pretty good advice. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Let us pray. Lord God, we bring before you our mayor, our local councillors and the council staff who serve our community faithfully and sometimes with little thanks. God, we thank you for them as they serve us in leadership roles. Provide a mayor and council and staff with reminders each day of why they decided to dedicate their lives to public service and use that commitment to encourage them. Give them peace when their work takes them away from home and families, and we bring their home and family before them today, before you today. We ask that you give our mayor and councillors wisdom on how to best serve the South Burnett. We also pray for your blessing upon all the council staff and workers, for we appreciate every one of them and their service to our community. Bless them, Lord. Lift them up. Give them a real sense of joy as they serve their fellow citizens. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Pastor Glenda, for sharing those words of wisdom and for your beautiful prayer this morning. Before we go on to the recognition of traditional owners by Councillor Duff, I'd just like councillors to please set your phone aside in accordance with our council policy. Set mobile phones aside. You're right to have your laptops on if you're using it for the agenda. And I've just realised that my phone's not switched off. So my apologies. Don't want the phone ringing during the course of our meeting. Okay, so Councillor Duff, I invite you to perform the recognition of the traditional owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Wakwaka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 5, declarations of declarable or prescribed conflicts of interest. Councillors, you have the agenda. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to describe a conflict of interest for item 19 in the confidential section 19.3, South Burnett Community Hospital Foundation Limited. I'm a member of the Community Hospital Board and would like to declare my conflict of interest and have chosen that I will leave and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while the matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That'll be duly noted. Councillor Henshin.
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, I'd like to submit a conflict of interest in the confidential section 19.1. I'm happy to leave the room when that's taking place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henshin. Duly noted. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I inform the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 19.1, submission of the funding proposal for unpaid rates. The nature of my interest is as follows. This declarable conflict of interest arises due to close personal relationship. I propose to leave and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while this matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Duly noted. Other councillors? Move on now to item 6. There are no deputations or petitions today, so we'll move on to 7.1. Minutes of the council meeting held last month on the 22nd September. Minutes can be found at page 6, and the recommendation is that they be received as a true and correct record of the meeting. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henshin, second, Councillor Froloff. Does anyone have any comments or questions in relation to the minutes? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 8.1 is at 35, and it's our monthly business outstanding table for the ordinary council meeting. We'll have that received, council, for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, second, and Councillor Potter. Okay. Any speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question on page 37 with the overgrown allotments. When are we putting that policy together? When's that likely to come back to the council?
General Manager, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yep. What I'll have to do is actually take it on notice and get back to you, Councillor, and just confirm with our staff when that policy will be ready.
Could you report that back to the standing committee meeting, perhaps, Councillor, in November?
Yep, we'll certainly try to do that. I'll just need to touch base with our staff to see how far along that they are with preparing that. So whether it comes back at the next standing committee or the one after, I'll have to confirm.
Thank you. Okay, councillor Duff.
I'm just wanting to know, with the fact that we didn't get the money for the Bunya sale yards, we've got that working group. Just wondering where that's going and what the purpose of the working group is now going forward with the change of. I know we had hoped we would get that funding and we didn't get it. So just some comments around that. Thank you.
Okay. The Coolabunga Working Group. Okay, councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillor Duff. Councillor Potter and myself attended a meeting down in Mergen last week in relation to that with manager Mark Watt, and discussions for quite some hours where we tabled where we thought we might go, and of course that meeting changed quite drastically to what we probably discussed some weeks and months ago because of the lack of the success in the funding for the Coolabunga sale yards. So Manager Watt and Councillor Potter, Denise White, myself and Michael Hunter had a very in-depth meeting, and we will bring that back to council at a future standing committee is what we discussed.
Councillor Duff, you comfortable with that response?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you. I guess because acting Manager Leanne probably can't answer some of these questions, but I was just wondering what is happening with the rates land sales on page 41.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. The sale of rates for land for rates and arrears is progressing well at the moment, councillor. The list of people identified on the rates to be sold up were served a summons last week. It's an intention to proceed form, so it's been served on all of those people identified, and then they have a time then to come back and pay in between then. Otherwise, we proceed with the sale of land. So that's scheduled. There's a very formalised process within the local government regs on timeframes and that. And we have Don, who is a relieving rates person with many years' experience, and he is handling that sale of rates and arrears as per the legislation. And he's also training one of my staff there so that we can have someone fully trained once we recruit for that position.
Thank you. I just was wondering how that was travelling. No, thank you. There's quite a few outstanding business matters, so I went through and I've got quite a few questions, but just wondering when are the tenders going to be finalised for the toilet cleaning? And I suppose that's you probably can't answer that one either.
I just don't have the exact date for when the closure, but my understanding was as soon as the tenders are closed, a panel of assessment will occur. A panel of officers will review those tender documents, and we will bring a report back to council for endorsement.
I'm sorry, and I was also interested in where are we at with the sale of those 3 blocks on page 48? That's the ones. We've got 3 blocks that are for sale there. Where is that at? Lot 24, Lot 3 and Lot 4.
Yep, certainly. What we've just done, remember previously we had actually gone about to appoint a real estate agent, so that tender went out, no tenders were received, so we've resubmitted that tender. We are keen to appoint a real estate agent for the sale of land, but in this case, this is actually a sale of land for overdue rates and charges. These are 3 allotments. Not necessarily just vacant land. So I'll just hand over to General Manager Jarvis to respond.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that there will be consolidated. They're not removed from this list until they're finalised, councillor, but it's all in the process of selling as per council's instructions. So I think we're looking early with in the new, well, it depends on the time frame, but it was around December we were looking to actually hold the auction, but I think it's been held back a bit, so it could be in the new year. But like I said, the process is being followed and it's full steam ahead. Pending if anyone pays their rates fully, they will be taken from the list, but otherwise it's everyone will be proceeded with.
Thank you. I've just got just one more, and that's it. On page 54, just the pavement scrubber and the litter vac. I just thought it would come to this agenda. We've had that, the councillors have all had a look, and the staff, I just thought that would be on the agenda, the outcome with that.
I believe that would come to a standing committee meeting first, is my understanding. So that would come through to the November standing committee meeting. Is that correct? Cleaning of footpaths?
Yeah. This was discussed, I think, at the last standing committee meeting, councillor, and it's also, I suggested there that there was a business case would have to be prepared because the capital budget for our plant replacement has already been adopted by council, and any variation to that would have to have a business case written and brought back for discussion with council as to what we would have to drop off the actual replacement list there as well. So it would have to go through the whole governance plant replacement process of purchasing additional assets there, and we'll possibly have to drop something out of our plant replacement program to accommodate this. So that's why there'd have to be a full business case presented before we could do anything about this.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I actually felt that the council had a good appetite for actually leasing that for a period, for 6 months, leasing the litter vac and the scrubber, and I was going to actually move a motion to that effect to test where we're at, because I think we would have to obviously do a budget review, but I do think that we need to get that happening sooner rather than later, because the footpaths are, particularly the Mergen footpath, needs cleaning regularly, and I think as we move forward with the other footpaths, Kingaroy, Nananga, they all need cleaning. So I was going to move a motion after this, if that's possible. Thank you.
Yep, yeah, absolutely entitled to Councillor Duff. Thank you, Councillor Schumacher.
Just Mayor, oh, sorry, before Councillor Sugar, just with that, because I know we signed off a public notice the other day, and so probably my understanding of it was too, we'd bring it back to the standing committee again, and then those resolutions would come there to the next ordinary. There's a request for quotation tender out at the moment for cleaning of the Mergen footpath and then sealing. So that I would have thought, and I'll yield to greater knowledge of engineers and footpath cleaners, that one that we've got out for quotation now, because it needs to be cleaned and then sealed, and then your machine would happen from there. Hence, I thought your timeline was November Standing Committee. Again, not preempting anything that'll come off the floor, but that is definitely out for quotation now.
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you. Just further to that, it was my understanding that yourself, Councillor Duff and Councillor Jones would actually work together and review the service level standard that Council's actually providing and the costs associated with that after the demonstration, and then come back to Council with recommendations. So I'm certainly appreciated the presentation. I think there's great gains to be made there. However, at this point in time, I'm not supportive of making rash decisions without actual evidence. So until that information comes forward and we do a proper review of the service standard and set our team up for success, I would not be supporting any motion off the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. We'll look forward to that coming to the next standing committee meeting in November. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 57, with regards to the magpies, sorry to bring this up again, but since we passed this in council last month, I think it was, I have been informed that there's been over 30 We did have 20 on the list, but I've been informed there's over 30 magpies now that they're going to relocate as such. And this was not in, like, the only number we had was 20, and I'm actually quite concerned now that this particular one is going to do a big budget blowout, and I would like to discuss this later. Thank you.
Councillor Potter, any response, Acting General Manager, before we move on?
No, not at this stage,
No,
thank you.
that's fine.
No, so it's,
Yes, Councillor Duff.
sorry, it is my portfolio and I can make a response. Those are just the ones identified in a list, but they're not the ones that have actually caused serious harm. There's only a few. That 31 was just all of the complaints put in by magpies. Not by magpies, by people about magpies. Thank you.
So through you, Mr Mayor, I would just like to know actually how many are on the list that we are removing, because that will affect our bottom line in the budget.
Acting General Manager, if we could have a report brought to the Standing Committee meeting of communities in November, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. Through you, as you know, my opinions on this, there is nothing progressing at this stage without conversation. There's no birds being relocated at this stage or being identified. So we've just got to wait for
That's my understanding, that's correct. I'm aware that the organisation is drafting a policy on how we're going to go about the assessment and identification of which magpie is going to be relocated.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
I want to clarify for Council, there is a resolution of Council to remove magpies that cause injury or harm, so there'll be an obligation on the staff to follow that resolution, Mr CEO, in accordance with the decision of Council. It has been taken, and that removal of magpies that may have caused injury and harm was not subject to the policy. The policy was a separate matter, Acting General Manager. So I just want to note that. Councillors, if you're looking to rescind that motion, I'll just refer you to 3.14, Division 4 of the Standing Orders in relation to the rescinding of motions. So that would require the appropriate notice provided to a future meeting. Okay, let's move on. Is there any other comments in relation to, or questions in relation to the business outstanding table? I might just...
Mayor,
Mr. CEO.
it can't be rescinded. So it's been acted upon. So if council was going to do something different, it would have just point of technicality, that's all. So if we did get a notice of recension, it wouldn't be an appropriate notice. It would have to be a different, council can pass a different resolution without complicating it any further, but this one's off and running. So once it's been enacted, it's not available for recension.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So we have enacted that policy, that decision of council now, so the staff certainly have an obligation to remove magpies that may have caused harm or injury in accordance with the resolution, Acting General Manager, and there'll be an expectation that would occur in accordance with that resolution until such time as an alternative resolution was passed by council. Okay, in terms of other matters there, just Mr. CEO, looking at, General Manager, infrastructure, Resolution 262 from the 24th of February. Just wanted to question there, are the old street signs as being removed now, or damaged street signs? Quick question, as they're being replaced, are they now being replaced with the new design?
Oh, I can answer that, yes. Ivy Street, there's several, where was it? I've got photos. So we're actually going to put out it's on my little to do, but when they pop up, if you go up Ivy Street off Tesman, there's a really nice one there, and they're just now starting to populate as per the discussion at the time. There's no new cost. It's as the old blades are being replaced. It's just a slow burn rollout. But yeah, they look really good.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Good to know that those new ones are coming in and replacing the old as removed. The independent accounting analysis resolved on the 28th of April, 335. Mr. CEO, would you mind giving us an update in relation to QTC? Page 38.
Oh, okay, going back further. Okay, thanks, Mayor. We've had, now there's an update. This is, and I will acknowledge with the week early, there's some comments that have been done that aren't on here, and one of those is mine. So following on from those, there's been several email exchange with QTC to organise last Thursday, tried to organise an appointment with them last Thursday while the Mayor and I were in Brisbane, and again on Monday. Their offices weren't available, so Anthony, one of the managers, QTC, will be at the LGAQ State Conference, and so have organised to meet with Mayor and I to meet with Anthony while we're at LGAQ. So that'll be the next stage, and finding out, besides training, what else they can do with us, and then we'll bring a report back from there.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay. Just going to make sure across all of that. Okay, I've got nothing further. Councillors, anything further before we'll go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, so we'll move on now to 9.1, which is at 59, and it's recommending the date, time and location for a special meeting of council to adopt council's annual report for 2020-21.
Mayor, if I may, just with this one, we picked a date. Now, feedback from some councillors, not everyone may be back on that Friday for from the LGAQ state conference, so happy to do with the date. The draft agenda, my apologies, the draft annual report has been handed to you, so we didn't want to put it on the agenda today because it is a comprehensive document and it does need a little bit of time to read it. We have 1 month from the date of the Auditor General's office sign-off, the day after the Auditor General signs off on the annual report. We signed the statements on the 5th of October, I think. The Audit Office sign-off was the 7th of October. So if you work on till Friday the 5th of November, we could either, and there was also the issue of swimming pools, which is on today's agenda, as well as where you want to go with the swimming pool. And a special meeting can only discuss the issues that are tagged for it. So if we just said for the, hence for the recommendation, we drop swimming pools in there. If it was just for the annual report, council couldn't discuss or resolve on swimming pools because it wasn't advertised as part of the special meeting. So there's a couple of options. That Friday the 29th would get us done in October. As much as it pains me to say, the Wednesday of the Infrastructure Committee meeting, we could do the special in front of the Infrastructure Committee meeting on the 3rd of November. Pretty much happy to take direction, Mayor, of where you'd like to go with the date. But the annual report will need to be dealt with prior to that Friday, the 5th of November.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, look, I think we'll get a motion up first. I'll now move that a special meeting of council be held on Wednesday, the 3rd of November in the Warren Trust Chamber, Glen Street, Kingaroy, commencing at, let's go at 1 p.m, Mr. CEO, for the following matters: adoption of the 2021 annual report and also the swimming pools. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Wednesday, the 3rd of November, 1 p.m. Okay, 9.2 is adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Corporate Credit Card Policy, Statutory 031. That's at page 61. The recommendation is the South Bennett Regional Council Corporate Credit Card Policy, Statutory 031, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Froloff. Speakers? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.4, adoption of Council's Library Collection Development Policy. That can be, sorry, no, I've moved on too quickly. 9.3, I always do one, Council's Financial Hardship Policy. That is at 65, and the recommendation is the South Bennett Regional Council Financial Hardship Statutory 012 Policy be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second to Councillor Henson. Speakers? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Now on to 9.4, Council Library Collection Development Policy at 71. Recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council Library Collection Development Policy Strategic 020 be adopted as presented. Mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Froloff. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.5, South Burnett Libraries Operations Policy can be found at 75. Recommendation from the Standing Committee is that the South Burnett Regional Council, South Burnett Libraries Operations Policy, Strategic 021 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.6, Rate Collection Policy at 79. Recommendation now of the Standing Committee is the South Burnett Regional Council Rate Collection Policy, Statutory 041, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Froloff. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.7, Council's Media Relations Policy at 86. And the recommendation from the Standing Committee is that the South Burnett Regional Council Media Relations Policy Strategic 001 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Okay, speakers. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this finds a good balance, giving councillors the opportunity to speak to the media on matters relating to their portfolios, as well as acknowledging the Mayor as the official spokesperson for council and the need for councillors to notify the Mayor on statements made to the media through media releases. I think I'd like to thank the CEO. I know this has been, there's been a lot of work done in this policy, and just happy to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff. Other speakers? Okay, well, I'll wrap up just before going to Councillor Shoemaker. Councillors, thank you for the discussion on this matter, and Mr CEO, my sincere thanks to you and your staff for the work undertaking in getting this policy to this point. This policy review has certainly activated some robust debate, and which, when conducted respectfully, of course, is absolutely good governance. However, I must say I've been disappointed to hear some of the statements made in my absence at the Standing Committee meeting on the 18th of August. I would like to point out that the old policy limiting the capacity of councillors to engage with media had been adopted under the previous term of council. I am sure that if you check my feedback and commentary to the CEO and staff during the policy review, you will find that I have keenly supported reforming this policy so as to provide an increased level of flexibility for councillors to engage with media. To my mind, this is in keeping with open and transparent council, and I thank you all for your contribution to such. At the Standing Committee meeting on the 18th of August, at which I was absent, Councillor Shoemaker made the following comments, and I quote, "In the past 12 months, media releases haven't flowed as quickly as they should and have blurred the factual, correct and consistent messages in the community. The current media flow chart has been choking up our system and has been causing our council reputational harm. Concerns that there have been instances where I should have been engaged and I haven't been, and things have been choked up in the system. Feel like I am walking on eggshells and not allowed to comment. Fellow councillors have tried to contact the Mayor and haven't had their calls answered or responded to. Statements as to opportunities for councillors' participation in council's paid advertising. Was a time before the last election where the Mayor came out and made some statements about the lockdowns in our communities, which I believe were to the detriment of our local member, Deb Frackington's campaign. Now, let me say, respectfully in the chamber, that I believe that the evidence shows that indeed these statements are not factual. Indeed, they are unjust and unfair to myself, the CEO and his council's media team. As such, in the interest of accuracy and fairness, I would like to clarify the following. As to our system being choked up, in the inference that it is due to hold-ups by the Mayor, I have gone through my email correspondence with media in detail, and since our new media officer commenced in February this year, there have been approximately 1,350 transactions between myself and the media team within the 6-month period to the August 21 Standing Committee meeting. Media releases have always been approved by the CEO in the first instance. In the vast majority of cases, my final approval, where requested, was provided within 14 hours. Not in all, but in the vast majority. In fact, in most cases, on the same day, within a few hours. As to council media releases, blurring the facts and causing council reputational harm. This is simply not true, and I believe highly unfair. As to not being allowed to comment, Councillor Shoemaker, I can show dozens of examples, which I have in my records, where our media officer has reached out to councillors, particularly yourself, on economic development matters, Councillor Potter on community matters, and Councillor Freiloff on waste matters. In fact, from my investigations, this has happened on almost every matter of portfolio relevance since she took up her position 8 months ago. And on all but one occasion, I have allowed the councillors' comments to take precedence and have never changed or removed a councillor's statement, except for on one occasion where Councillor Shoemaker provided statements that I believe could have caused issues for our First Nations people in relation to a sensitive matter of traditional ownership. As to my not being able to be contacted or returning calls of councillors on media matters, I apologise if that has happened on the odd occasion. But again, I strongly dispute that this is a regular occurrence, and indeed challenge anyone to demonstrate otherwise. As to opportunities to participate in paid advertising, the only paid advertising with which I am involved is the fortnightly Mayor's message in the paper and the radio talks on Monday mornings. You know that all councillors actually do have a regular article in the paper on their portfolios, and that almost 12 months ago, I invited by email all councillors to let me know if you'd like to join me on the radio at any time on a particular topic relating to your portfolio. Despite sending a second follow-up email, the only councillor to respond has been Councillor Duff, who has since spoken on the radio several times, and on every occasion she asked was given the opportunity to join the Mayor on the radio talk to speak about matters to do with her portfolio. Since then, I know that our media officer has again reached out to councillors and invited you to join me on the radio on a Monday mornings, and I know that some councillors have indicated that they'd like to be included in that cycle, and I'm sure that she will do her absolute best to ensure that that happens. As to the statements that, as to statements by Councillor Shoemaker that my statements were to the detriment of Deb Frecklington, let me make it very clear. One, the mayoral statement to which you refer, Councillor, was put through the office of the CEO, as they always are. Two, was in no way intended to affect the state election chances of Ms Frecklington. They were made, in fact, prepared by myself and Mayor Sando, and were made in the interest of protecting our communities from COVID at a time at which we had serious concerns about the impact of proposals to open the border and the pressures being applied to the Premier to do so. We did this in the interest of protecting our communities, particularly the pork plant, Swickers, in Kingaroy, and the pork industry across our region in Queensland. And of course, and very importantly, the First Nations people of Cherbourg and our region, and not just the physical harm, but the intergenerational and psychological trauma that another checkpoint would cause if COVID got anywhere near Cherbourg. I'm sure that if you speak with Mayor Sando, she will confirm that this was not a political statement. Its intentions and statements were in good faith, with a good heart, in the best interest of our community. I will leave it at that. I am very comfortable with the policy, and again, I thank everyone for their work involved, and we'll now go to Councillor Duff for right of reply before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I just like to reiterate that I think it's a good policy. Thank the CEO for his work, and the Mayor for, as he stated, opening up the lines of communication and giving the councillors more of an opportunity to speak to the media. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour?
No opportunity.
No, the concluding statements end the debate in accordance with our standing orders. Thank you very much, Councillor. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Shoemaker, happy for you to make comment now if you'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to point out that actions always speak louder than words. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Item 9.8, Annual Operational Plan 21-22 Implementation Progress Report for the period ending 30 September 21 and can be found at 91. The recommendation is that the South Burnett Regional Council Annual Operational Plan 2021-22, the plan, Implementation Progress Report for the period 1 July 21 to 30 September 21 be adopted as presented and the following changes be made to the plan. Council, those changes are as presented. So we'll seek a mover. We have a mover for such. Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Duff. Thank you. Speakers, anything to add there, Mr. CEO, in terms of those additions?
No, they're the ones that have been picked up as we've, I think CCTV was a council resolution. There's been a couple. I would acknowledge the GMs and the managers for the feedback. She's a big old plan, just saying. First quarter is always a little bit slow in a couple of areas while we get rolling into the year, and certainly looking forward to rolling out the rest of the operational plan over the next 12 months or 9 months.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge the amount of work that's actually gone into the first quarter of this year. It was actually fantastic to read over the operational plan and the progress that has been made. I do note I have some concerns around some of the things, and clearly it goes to say, you know, council, we are so focused or limited by our resources in terms of going that extra mile and doing some of the things we would like to do. So I definitely got that from the operational plan. I got that we're definitely working on some big projects and there's a lot of priorities, but clearly the things that traditionally a small regional local council would actually have the resources, time or capacity to invest in sometimes have to take a back seat. So I did get that through the report with some of the examples where it's clear we have gaps in resources available. But I'd certainly just like to congratulate the staff. It's a fabulous report on the first quarter of the year, and I think there are many great things to come. So thank you, and yeah, I fully look forward to the next quarter.
Thank you, Councillor. Other speakers? No, let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carry unanimously. Thank you all. 9.9 is the monthly financial information report. It's at page 154. And the recommendation is that the monthly financial report, including capital works and works for Queensland, as at 30 September 2021, be received and noted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, second to Councillor Froloff. Speakers? Anything to add, General Manager? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had two questions, just in relation to page 160, expenditure, second dot point. It states fleet is above target, largely due to additional recoveries from internal plant usage of approximately 193,000. I just would like some further explanation about that. And the second question, just in relation to page 163, sales revenue, second paragraph. As of 30th of September, sales revenue is tracking below target at 12%. This is largely due to timing in when RPC and RMPC works for this financial year are scheduled to be performed. Claims of 97,000 are currently in progress and should be finalised shortly. I just wanted to understand what our annual allocation for RPC and RMPC works actually is, and is what we actually claimed reconciled against the work that's done, and do we do an audit to ensure everything is actually that we can claim is actually claimed? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I actually was a little bit excited when I saw that revenue to myself, Councillor, to be quite honest, that 193,000 there. I did query the fleet supervisor and I said, why is this so high? And he explained that we did a review last year of our plant hire rate, and council adopted the new recommended hire rates in line with the budget this year. So this reflects it. It also reflects the correct booking out now of the plant. Yeah, so we are recovering through that. So that's the reason behind that. We were having a few problems with people. They weren't being booked out properly, so we weren't recovering through the bookings. And as far as the RMPCs in the, what page is that on now, sorry? Yeah, I've just got these ones here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, you'll see there on the graph the actual budget there where it's got for the RPCs there is 680,000 and the RMPCs there are 2.2075 million. What happens with, and this is an infrastructure claim that I think Kevin actually does, and you can speak to it if you like, Kevin, but normally with your RMPCs, it's through main roads, you identify your roads. It could be, slashing, poisoning and that, and we put in a budget for that amount, and as the works progress, we do monthly claims to recoup that portion there, and it depends on when in the year that the works actually start that we actually claim. So it's all retrospective. But if, Kevin, I'm not sure about balancing back, but I know from my days doing RMPC claims was that sometimes we would go over and council would obviously contribute that extra money there, but we always tried to spend the money that we were given from main roads. So if Manager Kevin would like to.
Sure, thank you. Just providing some additional information. So the RMPC, Road Maintenance Performance Contract, so that's a contract we have with Department of Main Roads. It is being a contract, there is a potential for us to make a profit or lose some money. So we are very careful about tracking our expenditure versus actual costs. And that's similar to the RPC, which is the road performance contract you see there in the document, which a little bit different to the maintenance. It's the capital work that we sporadically do for main roads, dependent on what work they have. But in terms of the RMPC, it's around about $2 million each year, relatively consistent year in, year out, as opposed to the RPC work.
Sorry, supplementary question. Just noting that as of September, we're tracking below target at 12%. I guess my question was just around what kind of works we're doing in that, like the audit and review process to make sure, we certainly don't give any money back, or we don't lose funds on that contract, is probably what I'm interested in, but happy to discuss that further. Probably would like some more understanding or clarification around those contracts, perhaps at a standing committee meeting or something like that would be greatly appreciated.
Yep, happy to take that on notice, standing committee, and I'll provide some additional detail for you.
Thanks very much, Manager. Okay, any further speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to Manager Kevin, just in relation to that RMPC, in the world we live in at the moment, and you've just stated that it's around that $2 million each year, is there any chance or any progress in that figure changing in the future? Like, we know what our costs and everything's doing and going in the world we live in the past 12 months. So you stated that's been around that $2 million for several years. I'm pretty sure we'd all agree in this chamber that we'd like to see that probably go to 3+. Is there any talk or future consideration of how that can be progressed?
It's rather an ongoing topic with Department of Main Roads. We meet with them on a regular basis throughout the year, and additional funding is always a topic, and it's there's never enough. In terms of our internal rates that we submit to Department of Main Roads, we do acknowledge that there is an increase each year in terms of CPI, etc., and we account for that. The end result is if the overall allocation remains the same, then there's less work that gets done.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, LGAQ, and we've certainly contributed in the past. This is like, I suppose, the fags campaign, for want of a better analogy. They've been just brought up one of the ones from earlier in the year, water and sewage subsidies. When they took that away, the state government. This is going back some years prior to amalgamation, but the SCAP, Small Communities Assistance Programs, RMPC. It's estimated, LGAQ has estimated, through the abolition of the SCAP program, the state's government saved $2 billion over the last 12 years. So RMPC, with the pool of funding and the pie of funding, we certainly contribute to the LGAQ as far as data, and when they ask for assistance, we all are chasing the same thing, and we need to grow the pie, and that campaign is ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, if there's no further speakers, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, General Manager, for bringing that forward. Your staff, thank you. 10.1 is a request to rename Quiet Glen Road, Boondooma, to Silent Lane, Boondooma. That's at page 199. And of course, this has been to the Standing Committee and has been through consultation directly with the property owners, and as a result, the recommendation at 199 coming from the Standing Committee meeting is that the South Burnett Regional Council resolves to rename Quiet Glen Road, Boondooma, to Siler Lane, Boondooma, and that Quiet Glen Road, Boondooma, be added to Council's register of future road naming options for consideration in the locality of Boondooma. Do we have a mover for such? Councillor Henson, second to Councillor Duff. Thank you. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And thank you to our staff for all the wonderful work you've done there and engaging with the community. 10.2 is the 25-26 Safe School ST funding nominations at 200. Recommendation from Standing Committee is the South Burnett Regional Council supports the submission of the following project and commits to co-contributing 50% of the 24-25 Safe ST program. Proposed project for 24-25, I will note, this is for 24-25, is William Street, Kingaroy, $270,000. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconder. Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.3 is the 25-26 Safe ST funding. And the recommendation, again coming from the Standing Committee meeting, is that South Burnett Regional Council investigate the Markwell Street Kingaroy project for the 2025-26 Safe ST program, and a report be brought back to Council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Jones. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Moving on to 10.4 is the Kingaroy Transformation Project Signature Tree Alternative. That's at page 202. And from the Standing Committee meeting, there's a recommendation that Council alternate the signature silky oak trees for the Kingaroy Transformation Project with the firewheel, Stenocarpus. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, second to Councillor Jones. Speakers? Questions? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.5, Bunya Highway Medians, Wandai Roundabout Community Consultation. That is at page 208. And the Standing Committee recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council adopt option 2, shown here as attachment 2, for the redevelopment of the Wandai Roundabout, including the associated landscaping works as preferred by the broader Wandai community, to progress to detailed design. Attachment 4. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. General Manager, would you please pass on our most sincere gratitude to your planning design team led by Manager Darcy for the tremendous work that they did in consulting with the community, and Councillor Henson as well on behalf of Chamber. Thank you for the work that you undertook in leading that, and to all the councillors in the community involved. Let's move on now then to 10.6, which is Bunya Highway Median refurbishment. It's at 216, and the recommendation is that council notes this report and the possible requirement for additional project funding to support the current scope, which includes the refurbishment of the River Road Roundabout, Youngman Street medians and the Wandai Roundabout. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Second to Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move in addition to the recommendation that the Wandai Roundabout option 2 proceed to be costed, tenders called and works commenced.
Mr CEO, advice as to, is it a substantial amendment?
That the Wandai Roundabout option 2 proceed to be costed, tenders called and works commenced.
Councillor, just a question, was that meant for the previous one or for this one? It just, yeah, my,
Well, no, through you, Mr Mayor. No, from what I can see from this recommendation, we're putting all these projects on hold because there's a lack of funding. And so I just think we've done the full consultation on this. There's an expectation from the community that we're going to progress and that we should start this project and not hold it up, because that's the way I read the recommendation, that we're putting those 3 projects on hold.
It does make a reference in there, Mr CEO, to somewhere. I did see that. Maybe we get clarification on that if we could, General Manager. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. The purpose of this report was to bring to Council's attention that we had sought proposals in relationship to the first component, and it is to bring to Council's attention that the costs that came back from a very limited response to our invitation exceeded our expectations significantly. Because we had in our budget estimates increased previously tendered rates and then they were exceeded again, we're looking at the mechanism of delivery. So it was not council staff's intention to continue with the procurement, which was only at that stage for Youngman Street. So we picked out the Youngman Street, went to tender on it. And what we've mentioned in our report is that we would like to seek more competitive and or cost-efficient ways of delivering the entire project. So that relates to each part. And you would see some commentary in there around the thinking of the possibilities that we would pursue. While we sought prices from an extensive list of tenderers, the response that we received was very limited. And as a result, we don't believe that it represents good value for money. So it was bringing to Council's intention that we seek to try harder in relationship to getting value for money in the delivery of the project, not per se to actually postpone. In fact, I do note Council's decision in relation to the previous matter, which will lead Wandai to continue to detailed design. So we're not actually ready to proceed with it, though I understand, Kevin, both River Road and Youngman Street are in a position for us to go ahead. So our thinking, if I may take a moment more, Mayor, was that we would use existing arrangements that we have already procured, utilise the resources that we have already unit rates on, and look at a different delivery model, likely to be under the direction of Council for the Youngman Street example. So we would use existing and hopefully local resources rather than a broad search for external resources as we attracted in the previous
If I could
one.
just interject, General Manager, I think the question's in relation to the Wandai Roundabout. Are we going to proceed with the Wandai Roundabout from detailed design through to construction, or will that be held up, as it says here in the report, with a review of the scope and treatments and perhaps using internal staff once we're in a position to after KTP? So I think it's specifically the Wandai Roundabout. Just want to know, will we proceed with that?
We'll continue with all 3 components of that budget item, Mayor, yes, certainly.
So there'll be no delay in Wandai Roundabout?
No, I don't believe so. There
No.
will be a delay in our planned delivery on Youngman Street because we haven't accepted the tender, but those later components should not be delayed.
Councillor Duff, just in terms of your motion then, that
So I'm
response?
happy to withdraw. I just thought, I read it like as if it wasn't proceeding, that it was being held up because we didn't have the funds.
Thanks, Councillor. So when okay, yeah, thank you. That just clarified my confusion too as to whether it was meant to be for the last one. Certainly in the same space is the previous resolution will continue to progress the Wandai Roundabout. So a short answer to your question, Mayor, is yes, that will go. There was, when these reports came and there has been a discussion in the past about what goes into closed and what doesn't. There was some commercial information in the original reports that did identify some of the price overruns. I took that out and I will own up to that. There was, considering we weren't particularly going to, or we're still negotiating with the contractors and trying to find a more effective mechanism to deliver, it was probably in advance to put that information out there because it would have compromised, I'm looking for the right word, but it would have put us at a disadvantage in those negotiations, if that makes, if I'm explaining that clearly. So yeah, so we just particularly wanted to flag it that there is issues with and it is, we've discussed it previously, there are some challenges now in procuring services, and so this one was effectively an information report to flag with you that we are having trouble. We aren't stopping, but we're looking at alternative, and yeah, so thanks, Councillor, and my apologies for the confusion at the start.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. CEO, for clarifying that. I think puts us in a better position of understanding. So thank you, General Manager, as well. Okay, so we have that motion there. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you. Certainly, I just appreciate the work that's gone into this and appreciate the understanding that there's no intention to cut the scope or certainly to choose aspects of this parcel of work over others. So thank you for that. I think your approach really aligns with Council's real ethos, the culture we're trying to create. You know, if we've got internal resources and other projects such as KTP running and we can work smarter, not harder, I think this is a great outcome. It also enables our staff an opportunity to work on a project like this and take some ownership in their own town. So I think that's fabulous. So thank you. I just fully support your recommendation here and certainly recognise, you know, with the report, over 160 tenders on vendor panel and 23 on Felix, and to hear, you know, we only received 2 tender responses, it really demonstrates saturation in the market at the moment. And I guess from a council point of view, as always, would rather see council dollars spent locally. So I see this sort of shift in pivot in actual response to delivering this work as in line with council's core values. So thank you very much for the update. Really appreciate it and appreciate the work that's gone into going to tender and then realising that's not going to work and going with a new approach. So thank you very much for bringing it to the table and for the update. I know that a number of people in Kingaroy are really looking forward to that fresh entrance in from the Bunya Highway, and I know there's significant investment happening in the area, commercial investment happening in the area, so it will only just add to the way our town looks and feels. So thank you.
Other speakers? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.7 Wandai Christmas tree location or relocation at 218, page 218. And the recommendation is that the South Burnett Regional Council approve the relocation of the Wandai Community Christmas tree from the Wandai Roundabout to a location in Coronation Park, Wandai, to be determined through consultation between Parks and Gardens and Divisional and Portfolio Councillors. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froloff, seconder. Councillor Potter, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to change the officer's recommendation to include the Wandai community, because I think that with consultation, it needs to include the community, not just the divisional and portfolio councillors, and Parks and Garden staff.
So Councillor, if we were just to put the word community before consultation, would that satisfy, address your concerns?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Froloff and Councillor Potter, you comfortable with that? Yep, yes. That's slight change. Thank you. Okay. Speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And again, thank you to those involved in that extensive community consultation thus far on that matter. 10.8 is the Haley Street car parks, Youngman Street down to William Street at page 220. And coming from the Standing Committee, meeting is a recommendation that the South Burnett Regional Council note the assessment of car parking bays in Haley Street, Kingaroy, and that officers amend the existing line marking plan to accommodate a people with disability PWD bay, and that the works are undertaken as soon as practicable. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder Councillor Potter. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all.
Mr Mayor?
Yes,
I'd
Councillor
like to-
Jones.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to move a motion from the floor in regards to the George Street car park. In regards to this, I would like to see the design, costing done and fast-tracked for the George Street car park to coincide with the completion of the KTP. And look at funding this option through Works of Queensland or LRCI.
Okay. Councillor, I think in terms of that being a motion of significance to which councillors had no background, and to move that off the floor, happy to allow that to proceed where it's perhaps bring a report back to the next standing committee meeting. You comfortable if we do it that way? Yep. Okay. Lynelle, can we just draft that up? The report be brought to the next standing committee meeting. Did you just want to, excuse me, to Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker. We'll come back to you shortly, General Manager. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you. I just had a question for the General Manager. Just certainly we've all talked about George Street and the importance of that car park, particularly with the KTP work. So I'm fully supportive of that discussion and know it's been highlighted as a project for W4Q or LRCI. We just haven't had those conversations yet. So I don't think you'll get any, certainly any not support in that regard. I just want to understand from the staff, noting that the extensive parcels of work on the table at the moment, is that actually, and the way in which our standing committee agendas are populated, is next month actually enough time? And would this be better to be brought back perhaps in the December or even in the new year? Just very mindful of how much work the team actually have on their plate at the moment. So thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Otto, Councillor Shoemaker, that was why I turned my light on actually, because we've completed our reports largely for November with the timing of the Infrastructure Standing Committee on the 3rd. So if, with Council's patience, if we could, I recognise the urgency in relationship to it, particularly in relationship to concurrence with our other work, but if we could, with your patience, extend it to the December Standing Committee meeting, that would be far preferable.
Councillor Jones, happy for that? Okay, yep, that's fine. So we've got thanks, Councillor Jones. So we've got concurrence on that from the mover and seconder, I believe. So further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.9 is the Kingaroy Transformation Project, removal of silky oak tree. That's at page 222. Recommendation from the committee is that the South Burnett Regional Council proceed with the removal of the existing silky oak tree from the corner of Alfred and Youngman Street and transplant the same in Memorial Park. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, thank you. Councillor Jones, a seconder. Speakers, Councillor Potter, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd actually like to change this recommendation and instead of Memorial Park, maybe put Carew Park in there because we're working with the, I just don't think that Memorial Park is the best placement for it. The pure reason is we are working on plans with regard to Memorial Park. And I think putting a tree in there just for the sake of transplanting it might not be the best move.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Henson and Councillor Jones, are you happy if we change that to Carew Park? Mover and seconders, and then we'll get that up for consideration.
Mr Mayor, just, look, I understand Councillor Potter and I totally agree with her in regards to Memorial Park and planning and all that sort of stuff, and just to plonk a tree, and sorry, wrong terminology, but to put a tree in the park just for somewhere to put it. Maybe there's some I don't know. I'm happy to be guided by the divisional councillors from Kingaroy, and their opinion I'll be guided by because they know the area better than I do. But yeah, I'm happy to move with their guidance, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, could I just ask the question, is council going to have a conversation around Karoo Park in the not too distant future? That being the case, yeah, happy, and as Councillor Jones, happy to be guided, but perhaps we could come up with another option for the silky oak tree somewhere, and whether that be, we would have, I'm sure, multiple places or entities that would be grateful of the tree.
Still have Memorial Park here as the motion, so we'll continue to discuss such. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Hench is saying. I actually think there are some more conversations to be had about Karoo Park and some other actual opportunities, and certainly we need to talk with the Karoo family about that. My view is that I agree, perhaps Memorial Park with the work that's happening and the master plan isn't the right location, but I also look at our rail trail head and some of those areas around Kingaroy, Apex Park, for instance, or certainly even maybe the showgrounds or something like that. I would like to see probably our staff, I don't have the expertise in this area, but I would like to see our staff make a recommendation, and I guess our council support that. So I think the Parks and Gardens crew actually have the best information about where this tree belongs in Kingaroy, and certainly with all the information that we've learned about it through the tree selection in KTP, I'd probably be guided by their advice. I think Memorial Park isn't actually the right location, noting that what we've got planned there, but I also don't think Karoo Park is at this point in time either, and that there are other established parks or spaces around Kingaroy where the tree could easily be relocated to. So I'd probably like to recommend that council proceed with the removal of the existing silky oak tree from the corner of Alfred and Youngman Street and transplant following the advice of the Parks and Gardens team.
Councillor Potter, just in response to the issue raised, I'm wondering how the chamber feels about changing the motion to say that from the corner of Alfred Youngman Street and transfer it to a location as determined through consultation between staff and Parks and Garden staff and the portfolio and divisional councillors. So if Councillor Duff, Councillor Potter and Councillor Shoemaker are happy to work with the Parks and Gardens team under the leadership of Manager Watt to determine an appropriate location, is that something that, is there an appetite for that? Yeah, okay. Councillor Jones, your comments before we go back to Councillor Potter?
Yeah, just I'm very mindful, through you, Mr Mayor, that Parks and Gardens, this tree is actually taken off and growing quite quickly by all reports from our tree experts down there. So we do need, keep in mind that we do need, they want to move it sooner rather than later, because if we let it get established, then it's, you know, it lessens the risk of it dying. So yeah, just keep in mind that we do need to move on that pretty quick to get a new location sorted. So if the councillors involved would keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter?
Yep, no, I'm taking all the information on board, and thank you for that. And I do understand what you're saying about Karoo Park, because it does need more community consultation. But we do have a lot of places around the area which is correct. We've got a gorgeous park right beside Lions Park at beside Bill Hull, which seriously doesn't have any, big trees in it. So that might even be a really good spot. So I look forward, but understanding what Councillor Jones is saying, that this is actually a matter of urgency. So I'm more than happy to get together with the councillors this afternoon after this meeting. Thank you.
So, councillors, we have we just have a little change there to that motion as presented on screen. Councillor Henson, are you comfortable with that change? Happy to continue to move such?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, happy to consider the second. No issues with that, Mr CEO? You're comfortable we proceed to the vote on that? Okay. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.10 is the Blackbutt Town Streetscape Project update at 2:23.
Mr.
Councillor
Chair, could I
Jones.
move a procedural motion in regards to this one? From the floor, the officer's recommendation, I just want to add to it that council notes the requirement for additional budget allocation from local roads and community infrastructure program, phase 3 towards the Blackbutt Town Streetscape Renewal and Upgrade Project. I'd like to add the amount of 300,000 in there, and I'm happy to speak to that if I have another councillor to second that, and I can explain. Thank you. Just exactly that as the amount, the budget, additional budget allocation be 300,000. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Jones. Mr. CEO, before we proceed, my only concern is that that's a fairly substantive matter for council to deal with without notice or having come to a standing committee meeting. I'm just not sure if I'm going to allow that one to go to council. Probably seeking a bit of your counsel in relation to standing orders on that.
There has been in recent, so yeah, it's Mayor, how do I answer this? My thoughts in previous has been about things coming off of the floor. It has been done previously over this term, so where we're going. The only thing, if it is debated, I would actually add to it that the additional budget allocation of 300,000 be considered for the budget review. So that would give it a price, and it'll be folded. It'll be considered as part of the budget review.
Yeah, Councillor Jones, would you be happy if we just perhaps, obviously we want to get this into the system. If we were to say that to the amount of 300,000 subject to the review of the capital expenditure budget, which we are working through at the moment in the coming weeks and months.
So what it is the LRCI funding, which is from the federal government. So does that come under, will that affect our capital budget? It will go through our capital budget. Look, we're at the stage now where this project has been held up for whatever reasons, and we've got to a point now, and it's probably, yeah, I understand the significance of us, of this council moving forward on this project, and that sum is required to progress with this confidently, and I'm happy to speak further if there was a seconder, Mr. Mayor. So that's just where I'm at. So I don't know what we do with that, but I understand that we need to move forward, and yeah, the game's changing every day. So I'd be guided by the CEO or yourself.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Look, certainly not wanting to not see this progress, taking your comments on, but I am certainly starting to take a firmer view as the chair in relation to motions off the floor with involving committee and council to significant expenditure, where there hasn't been time for councillors to consider such with sufficient background reporting and so forth. So I know we have been doing this a little bit, but after 18 months, I'm probably keen to sort of tighten that up, Mr. CEO. And please, Mr. CEO, correct me if I'm out of order in any way, happy to be corrected, but not keen to allow this to move off the floor unless it's going to be subject of review of the capital expenditure budget, where a report would be brought to council or to the standing committee meeting to consider. Would you be happy to include that in the motion, in which case I'd allow it to proceed?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just so timeframes around this discussions, when do we look like the additional budget allocation 300 subject to the review of the capital expenditure budget. All of a sudden we're tightening things up on these, but yeah, understand that. So I guess my concern is with this motion is the time frame around when we get to review the capital expenditure. When do we look like having that conversation, Mr. Mayor or CEO?
The workshop the other day was the start of the discussion of the capital. There is further discussions that have got to be had we've got second quarter review coming up upon us very quickly, and given there was only minor changes to the capital budget, certainly over this next couple of weeks, well, LGAQ State Conference next week, we've got several significant discussions as far as org review, capital, LRCI, Works for Queensland coming. So we would need to get a commitment with councillors that we can have that done before the November ordinary meeting. That would be really, really good.
Yeah, thank you. So that being the case, Councillor Jones, November ordinary, you're happy to let that proceed as is? Okay, well, we have that as presented. Councillor Jones has moved such. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Okay, speakers. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. This has come about and we've discussed 2 or 3 meeting agenda items here leading up to this with the same conversation and context around the conversation of costings, the Youngman Street, Wandai roundabout, River Road roundabout. When we've gone to contract, there's a 20% increase in all activities to produce this project, and that goes across all the materials, everything else. So it's 20% increase across, which is the original budget, which gives a total of about $261,000 extra in overruns because of the budget and all that sort of stuff. And this is clearly showing exactly in everything else that we're proposing to do. Right through Wandai, I spoke to Councillor Duff this morning out the back and Mergen and all that sort of stuff. So again, I've been saying for the last 3 or 4 weeks that just be aware that these sort of things are coming and these are the things that we've committed to. So without doing this extra funding, and it's a sad story of what's going on in Queensland and Australia, and every local council's going through it. It's people, tradies are just charging pretty much what they want because there is such a shortage, and this would pretty much ruin the whole project down there in Black. But if we were to cut short and leave stuff out, it would be a half-finished project. And we've always been speaking about if we're going to do it right, as long as we can justify the cost. I've spoken to the staff on a regular basis. Kevin and Jed have done a wonderful job along with all the other people involved. They can justify these extra costings and all that sort of stuff with the work they've done. And it's a 20% increase across the board on labour, equipment and all that sort of stuff that we need to do there. So I'm just saying to the chamber, that's the justification for it. It's an unfortunate thing, and I think we're going to address this quite regularly in the upcoming expenditure models with Works for Queensland, LRCI and any other projects we use contractors or outside work for. It's an unfortunate thing, but we've got to deal with it, and this is one of the projects that we have committed to. So I'm just looking for support in the chamber to support the extra claim for the money. Thank you.
Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you. Certainly I agree. We've resolved to complete this project, and certainly recognising the other reports that market at the moment has indicated that this is the best approach moving forward. I do believe that this project does have to take some precedence over the other projects that we might have in the pipeline, being that we have committed to it, and this council has resolved to complete it to the standards in which we've taken those designs to the community, and I think we need to be true to our word. I am mindful of value for money and the current impacts of the market conditions, so I do look forward to seeing more information in regards to that full costing. And I also think with the learnings from the KTP project and some of our resources on the ground, keen to also see how they may be able to support or what we may be able to do in that regard to actually see Blackbutt delivered on. Certainly no increase to budget is ever an easy conversation, and I know we've already had that with this project before, but I do believe it has been some time since anything has been done, and we do need to deliver this, deliver on what we said we were going to deliver. So certainly value for money is key. Project management, core responsible project management is key, and I do believe when we're having discussions about future projects in the pipeline, while we all have wish lists, we do have to be true to the projects this council has resolved to actually complete in this term, and this is one of them. Thank you.
Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to support it as it's on the books, but just keen to see the designs and costing as similar to what Councillor Shoemaker's saying. so that we know what the additional funding is being used for, just so that we understand what we're spending our money on.
Before we go to Councillor Jones for right of reply, any further speakers? And we'll let Councillor Jones wrap up. Councillor Hensham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Councillor Jones and Councillor Shoemaker, I've said in this chamber before, my big concern is when we do projects like this, get in and do them once and do them well, because if we go back to Blackbutt on a project that we've talked about in this chamber for quite some time, and we cut it short, whether it's this council or the next council, and we have to go back there, rest assured the costing then will be exorbitant. So I'm fully supportive of this, as Councillor Duff has explained, and as Councillor Shoemaker's alluded to, our projects that are on the table in the future, I think we want to look very closely at and make sure that the ones that we do come up with, we do support them 110% and do them properly. And there might be some that have to go on the waiting list, but you know, we've got so many projects in the pipeline, there's never enough money and we can't do them all. Rather than do little bits and pieces here, I think it's a great approach to be able to finish Blackbutt. It's been a wonderful project, as previous ones are, so yeah, I look forward to being able to support this and get Blackbutt done and move on to the next project. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Jones to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just to answer Councillor Duff's question there in regards to the design and all that, nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. It's just the actual overruns and 20% increase of when we first started and when we done the costings internally. We went out and I'd like to get Acting GM Jed to just confirm or correct me or anything like this, but it's basically come down to the...
Sorry, Councillor, we just probably won't go into there's some commercial sensitivities around some of these at the minute, so yeah, so
Appreciate that,
happy to brief Council fully, but we just need to resolve a process first.
I understand that, so yeah. So without saying any more, Mr Mayor, everything's still the same. It's just the costings, and everything else is just everything we talk about. Go anywhere in Queensland, it's a 20% increase across the board for everything that we're doing. So that's how we've been caught out on this one. So Mr Jed might be able to explain a bit clearer if he wants to.
I'll be happy to wrap this one up. I think, yeah, we'll move on to the vote. I think, yeah, right of replies have been completed. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 11.1 is the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee at 2:26. Now, we are going to wrap up at 10:30 for morning tea, but we'll deal with this one first at 2:32. And we have a recommendation coming to Council. And the recommendation is as presented there, which has come from get on the right page here. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page, 2:26, yeah. So at 2:26, of course, we have that recommendation there, which has come forward from the Standing Committee meeting that we, terms of reference, be developed. But we now have the recommendation that Council appoint the following individuals who have submitted an expression of interest as members of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee as per the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee terms of reference, individuals as stated on the notes as presented. Do we have a move for such? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Fryloff, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The individuals named here are all, they're all exceptional in their own fields, and there's a really good cross-section of people on this list. So we've got the cultural, we've got history and arts, and it's all types of arts. So this is a fantastic cross-section of people for the committee, and I do look forward to working with Councillor Duff on this. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. Do we have any other speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Potter on all the work she's done behind the scenes. She's sort of our arts champion, and often it's not seen how many conversations and things that she actually has. But this is an excellent committee, and I'd just like to congratulate you. I think there's going to be some great outcomes from this, and I certainly look forward to how we look at our projects into the future and how we apply artistic elements and cultural elements to those. I think it is a gap, and with an advisory committee like this, I do believe you'll deliver on that. So thank you very much, and best of luck. I look forward to the reports that come back from council, to council.
Okay, and of course, this, just to clarify, this of course is in accordance with the terms of reference that were adopted by council back in March of this year, and it's nice to see that the appointments have now come forward, the recommendations have come forward. So thank you, Mr. CEO, to you and your team in progressing the terms of reference and supporting our council and community, indeed in forming a very important advisory committee as part of our governance process. Okay, if there's no further speakers, Councillor Potter, anything to wrap up before we go to the vote? Okay, we'll go to the vote then. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. We might be able to just, no, it's 10:30. Let's wrap up there. I'll now move that we adjourn for morning tea and resume at 10:45 a.m. Second to Councillor Henson. Thank you. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Welcome back. On our move that we reopen the meeting at 10:55 a.m. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. Meeting now reopened. And we are at item 11.2, which is at page 232. And coming from the Standing Committee meeting, we have a recommendation that South Burnett Regional Council opens the Australia Day and Anzac Day and School Awards Community Grant Program funding categories year-round, as opposed to inclusion in the current funding rounds, and that the Community Grant Program policy be updated accordingly. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 12.1, dog registration discounts is at 233. Recommendation from the committee is that a 50% discount be applied to all dog registration fees within the defined area for eligible pensioners in receipt of an aged or disability pension. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Duff. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there was significant debate about this in our recent community standing committee meeting. My decision, however, not to support this motion stands. While I certainly want to support our pensioners in our community, I do think this motion actually contradicts the legislation in which we are responsible for adhering to, and certainly governing here in our council area. So while I know other councils do it, I don't think that's a fair comparison, and I do believe we have actually statutory and legislative requirements to ensure animal management and certainly to encourage the desexing of dogs in our community. So I will not be supporting this motion today.
Further speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I moved the original motion. I think that the pensioners who have the non-desexed dogs struggle to with the cost of desexing, and they're not the target dogs. They're companion dogs. They're little dogs that that are there for the just to support the pensioners. I think that the pensioners are struggling in our region, and that as other councils have done it, that we should follow their lead. I think it's the very least we can do to support our pensioners across our region. Thank you.
Councillor Froloff.
Thank you, Mayor. I support the aged pensioners, but I have hesitation in supporting disabled pensioners. I know some aged pensioners are struggling to pay for registrations and that, but I just want to put it out there that I support aged pension, but not disability pension.
Right. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you, Councillor Froloff and Councillor Duff and Shoemaker. I didn't support this motion in the standing committee, and I won't be supporting it today. Those know me very well and my affection towards animals, and no more so than dogs. A desexed animal, as far as them not being an issue, entire dogs are as big an issue, whether they're little, medium or huge. We all have aged family members. Pets are a wonderful thing, but I think under this circumstance I can't support this motion, because I honestly believe if you love them enough that you will do anything for them to keep them and look after them. And I've said before, veterinary surgeons will do their best to help aged pensioners in some shape or form with the discussions held with them. So I'm not supporting this today. Thank you.
Hey, further speakers? Councillor Jones, anything to add before we look to wrap up? No? Okay. All right, we'll just wrap up and then we'll go to Councillor Potter for final comments to conclude the debate. Yeah, I certainly continue to be in support of this. Having what everyone said, that I think that that providing some assistance and compassion and support for people who are on the age pension and or on a disability pension is important. We do, want to make our communities of choice for people living with disability, and I do know people, particularly with intellectual disabilities or issues around mental health, who may be such that they actually end up on a disability pension, find the companionship of a dog very comforting and of great assistance. In addition to that, I don't think that I think we still do enough to meet the requirements of the legislation, in that the $131 for a microchipped dog comes down to $65.50. So I think we still provide an incentive as required by legislation, and I'm comfortable that meets that condition. And as such, yeah, I'm happy to continue to support the motion as put forward. Councillor Councillor Potter, anything to wrap up from you before we go to the vote?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes then. Look, I support this one purely because of the aged and the disability pensioners. The disability pensioners, most of those are the ones that actually have the service dogs, and I do believe that this will be of great use to them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Potter. Okay, well, let's go to the vote then. Those in favour? No? Okay, those in favour? Councillor Duff, Councillor Potter and Councillor Otto. Those against? Councillor Jones, Councillor Henson, Councillor Froeloff and Councillor Shoemaker, and the motion has been defeated. Okay, we'll now move on then to 13.1, which is review of current water restrictions at 234. And so this was presented to the Standing Committee, where the recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council remain on level 3 water restrictions, and that the Water and Wastewater Department review monthly. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froeloff, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Jones. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in, yes, Councillor Froeloff, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Sunwater has still given us 100% allocation, so there is no changes with our level 3. The community is doing well with their water usage below what they should be using. So, yeah, I'm happy to keep it at level 3 water restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Froeloff. Other speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, Councillor Froeloff's comments there just alerted me to the fact that I would just like to make a shout out to our people of our South Burnett region for doing the best they can, because on average I think we're looking at per person 100 litres or something, 130. So I see all the time that the Toowoomba Regional Council, for instance, is really trying to encourage and getting their people to reduce their usage. So I just want to make a huge shout out to the people that live in our South Burnett region, understanding the importance of water. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Well said. And of course, Toowoomba is trying to get to 175 and we're already at 130. So absolutely, people are doing a great job in doing the right thing. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, I'd like to fully support that and thank Councillor Froeloff for the update. Certainly, just the other day, I actually met with a resident in my area who actually has a tub in her sink and saves as much water as she can from her kitchen for a garden. And I just think it goes to the values in which a community and a country community like ours has when it comes to water. So I think every drop is saved as best as it can in a lot of households across the region. And yeah, fully supportive of leaving it this, because certainly recognise how important things like people's gardens really are to their mental health and well-being. So thank you for the update.
Okay, if there's no further speakers, Councillor Froeloff, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.2 is the BOR, Building Our Regions Fund, Guidelines and Timings at 2:35. Mr CEO.
Mayor, thank you. If I could just jump in before councillors are wondering, which probably, the recommendation was for both. Certainly the tone and what I heard at the debate the other day was to seek some further, well, us and officers, I shouldn't say I, it's the royal we, We sought further information, and whilst departmental officers, it would be improper for them to give full advice as to certain aspects of the grant. Certainly, the conversations that we had was that the submissions would be well considered if there was one good project put up each round rather than multiple projects for the round, given the nature of the funding allocation and split and the limited quantum of the funding. So the recommendation was trying to keep in line and in spirit with what was discussed at the standing committee, just breaks it up so that breaks them up into the two. Now, if we have, and I'll say I in this one, if I've misjudged that Gordon Brook wasn't the first priority, but certainly what I heard the other day, that we'd go Gordon Brook this go around and then Mount Warulin for a second, but certainly it's the floor, and hence the slight difference between what was passed to put two in to the recommendation that we would have. Our understanding is our best chance of an application is for one and put the best bullet in the barrel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. CEO, for clarifying such. So we have it there that we received the report, consider Gordon Brook off-stream storage for round one, and then note Mount Warulin project as a future shovel-ready project for future round. Mover, Councillor Jones, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Froloff. Speakers, I'm happy with that. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to hear this, as I mentioned the other day that I thought our best option would be to have a significant number one and then put another one in the following round. So I fully endorse this recommendation, and fingers crossed we get some sort of positive outcome from it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fully support the recommendation. Recognise that Gordon Brook is our most immediate priority, but Mount Warulin certainly isn't far behind it. And I'm pleased to see that it will be a shovel-ready project that we're preparing and working in the background, because what's clear with these rounds is they don't actually give local governments like us very much time to put forward an application. So I think it's very important that we continue working on that secondary project and we put it forward for the following round. I just want to confirm that we can actually submit to following rounds of round 6, that we won't be penalised if we just get one project up. I just want to confirm that, please. Thank you. From what I read, I don't believe so, but I want to confirm.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. It's, Mayor, if I can steal your thunder a little bit, Mayor and I met with departmental officers, including the new Director General, in the throngs of finding a date and time this week. This is, when I say hot off the press, I haven't yet confirmed with the General Manager, but he and or others will be invited. Those questions are exactly as we're having not only our local, again, big shout out to Bundaberg Department of State Development for their assistance always in these programs. The department, what do they call them now? Water, Natural Resources Management Water. We're organising a video link Teams meeting with the departmental officers to go through. That is set for after this meeting, for depending on what council put up as its resolution, without being presumptuous, the council, like what council would decide by resolution. And we've got a list of questions about, so that will be, hopefully we'd have an answer by Friday night as to those questions. So there will be further information come back, but yeah, these will be, and again, acknowledging the departmental officers are constrained by probity and there's certain things they can't do, but that broader general advice is we want to make sure we don't accidentally trip over a landmine.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you for that clarity. I certainly think that's really important to understand, because the reality is both of these projects underpin Kingaroy's urban water security. And while Gordon Brook is certainly very important from a quality point of view, Mount Warulin is equally as important. So I do think we need that information, because in some ways I do wonder if these two projects actually need to be packaged together, because they're, while one is water quality and one is actual quantity, I think they're both critical to Kingaroy's water security, and in some ways I actually wonder if they shouldn't be packaged together. So I do look forward to more information about that. At this point in time, I'm happy to support this as it stands, but I do think in some instances with water, We've got some very big issues to face and very big challenges ahead of us. And I'm not against taking an ambitious approach as well. So thank you.
Mayor, if I may also, just in talking with my peers, this will be, and I'm not going to tell you anything you wouldn't have guessed already, this is going to be an incredibly competitive round of funding. I know of 3 other councils in talking to, as I said, my peers at my level that are putting in for the full 2 million in this first round. So if all 4 of us get up, there's 8 of the 10 million gone. Now, I won't say I can't see that happening, but there is going to be some fancy footwork with the funding. And that number, the reason that number before about the $2 billion with the SCAP program was so close to my mind with this is that the old Small Communities Assistance Program, depending on the size of the council, was 50-50 or 75-25. And these sorts of projects would have fallen straight in under SCAP. And particularly a smaller council would have got 75% state funding, and you could have blended the rest between Lowndes, Commonwealth and Range. A larger council, I'm not sure where we would have sat these days on those guidelines, but even at 50-50, it was such a really, really good program. And I know a number of councils and people lament the loss of that program because water and sewage is such a massive infrastructure built across the state.
Okay, thank you. We'll just go to Councillor Fryloff now. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, these 2 projects are very important to water security for the South Burnett and especially Kingaroy. I just want to acknowledge the team that have been working closely with the property owners that we're dealing with out at Gordon Brook and Mount Rural. But I have full support, and I'd love to put both of them forward, but if we've got a better chance of getting one up, I definitely would like to see the Gordon Brook off-stream storage put in.
Okay, further speakers before we wrap up? Okay, I'll just, quick one, Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just noting the conversation in the chamber, I absolutely recognise it'll be a competitive process. I do, however, think having the largest pork processing facility in the Southern Hemisphere with the number of people it employs locally and with our low socioeconomic levels of disadvantage, I actually think we've got a very strong case. And what we know through the MIP process, our actual risk of failure being so high and so unacceptable, I actually do believe we have a very strong case for an ambitious project and approach with this Building Our Regions Fund. And I do believe regional areas like ours actually need the support more than metropolitan areas that have the ratepayer base who can actually pay for the infrastructure they need. Our region will continue to be crippled by its ability to grow and develop without suitable water infrastructure, and I know none of you would disagree with me, and that's why I tend to agree with Councillor Fryloff. I will support the one application, but I do want more information because I do believe in some ways we should consider packaging these and actually putting our step forward and getting a larger share of the funding here for the South Burnett to fix this problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Okay, we'll just final comments, then we'll go to Councillor Jones to wrap up. Yeah, look, just in terms of some of the observations around the time made available. So the expression of interest close for the benefit of the community. Expressions of interest close on the 23rd of November. So should this be resolved today, this project would go in as an EOI. Then 5th of January, applications open, and we will have until the 19th of April next year to submit our application. So basically 3 months to get the detailed application through. In speaking with Manager Lowe, who has invested a lot of time and energy into considering the options for council in terms of Kingaroy's water security, it's his view from my discussions with him that Gordon Brook Offstream is certainly the most critical piece of infrastructure required. And it is very much about water security. If the Bunya pipeline was to go down for maintenance and Gordon Brook is less than 50%, which of course we know happens from time to time, we're in an unenviable position then of having all sorts of problems with treating the water to be able to supply it to, of course, our large manufacturers such as Swickers and the residents across Kingaroy. Yes, as Mr. CEO has articulated, we had a very productive discussion with the Director General of Water, the State Government, and also the Minister's Senior Advisor in relation to the BOR fund, and made it very clear that this will simply be the first of a rolling program of applications from our council over the 3 years of the fund, whereby it's a 10 million, 30 million and 30 million rollout over 3 years for a total of 70 million. So we've certainly articulated to them that we won't be, it won't be just one application we go away, that this is a process that has an integrated strategy that involves a number of elements, including Mount Warrulan, including allocation acquisition, alongside putting in place, obviously, the arrangements that are necessary to meet the regulatory requirements on that referable dam at Gordon Brook, and we're continuing to work in that space as well. So it's very much a work in progress, but I certainly support this as a good opportunity for us to hopefully get some support and fund what is a critical piece of infrastructure. Councillor Jones, to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Aaron. That's exactly right. That's my justification of putting Gordon Brook slightly ahead of Mount Warrulan, is the fact that we have off-storage water when and if the Bunya pipeline breaks down. Mount Warrulan can still function, and yes, it certainly needs an upgrade, and we certainly need to do that, but we've got that focused in our forward program for borrowings and all that sort of stuff, and the Mayor's just touched on, he's made it well aware down in State Parliament in Brisbane that this will be a strategic process where we'll have plenty of applications coming in, so the justification is there to put Gordon Brook off stream at the very top, because we need to have that security of having that hole full if for any reason that the Bunya pipeline goes down, and the rest of the pipeline we can get water into Kingaroy until we get that other issue fixed. So that's my justification for putting Gordon Brook, and happy to support Gordon Brook as number one priority.
Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.1, Council Land Investigations. Proposed divestment of land asset is at 277, and the recommendation from the Standing Committee is that South Burnett Regional Council offer for sale on the open market by way of tender Lot 41 on RP 57676 at 29 Jellicoe Street, Proston, and Lot 30 on RP 36983 at 14 Earl Street, Memarambi. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff. Seconder, Councillor Potter. Thank you. Speakers? To the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.2, Walter Road, Kingaroy, Future Use Project Plan, 278. Standing Committee recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council undertake community consultation to establish the current use of the park and investigate future use options, and if investigations show that the park is not significantly used by the public, make application to the Department of Resources for a conversion to freehold tenure and divest of the property. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Thank you, speakers. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.3, Trustee Permit, Tingura Carriage Club at 279. Recommendation from Standing Committee is that South Burnett Regional Council enter into a trustee permit non-exclusive use with the Tingura Carriage Club Incorporated for Lot 251 on FY 2262 and part of Lot 91 on FY 2885, with conditions including A, term of 3 years, B, rental of $75 per annum plus GST. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.4, Amendment to Licence to Occupy, an additional trustee permit, South Burnett Mountain Bike Club Incorporated, can be found at 280. Recommendation from Standing Committee is that South Burnett Regional Council enter into a trustee permit with the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club Incorporated for Lot 352 on FY 2534 for a term of 3 years at $75 per annum plus GST, and terminate the current licence to occupy with the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club Incorporated, amend the boundary and enter into a new licence to occupy over part of Lot 2 on RP 212916 for a term of 3 years at $75 per annum plus GST. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, I would just like to acknowledge the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club and certainly the properties team I think this has not been an easy task. However, I think there are exciting opportunities for adventure tourism in our region, and we've got some incredibly hardworking volunteers who are putting so much of their time, energy, passion, and resources into creating what will be a premier mountain biking facility at Gordon Brook Dam. And I just can't wait to take my family and to go and see other local families and young people enjoying the facility, young and old, because I must admit it's incredible the people who are taking up mountain biking at all ages. It does not, there's always an opportunity if anyone is interested. I just think the opportunities for training and learning and sharing ideas are great, and I just cannot thank the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club enough for their passion, the fire in their belly, and their pursuit of funds to make this a reality. So they haven't sat around expecting people to do the work for them. They've certainly done the heavy lifting, and I cannot wait to see what they create. I know it's going to be grand, so thank you to the team for the support in getting this to this level. I know it's been a long-standing parcel of work, but it's much appreciated.
Further speakers? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.5, licence to occupy Mergen Meals on Wheels Incorporated at 281. Standing Committee recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council enter into a licence to occupy for part of Lot 1 on M55124. A, for a term of 5 years with an option of an additional 5 years. B, rental at $75 per annum GST exclusive. C, for the purpose of an office and storage space for the administration of Meals on Wheels. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconder Councillor Froloff. Thank you. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.6, Mergen PA&H Society. Request to transfer ownership of buildings at 282. Recommendation from Standing Committee is as presented. So we'll seek a mover on that, and then we'll go to discussion. Councillor Duff, seconder. We have a seconder. Councillor Jones. Might just now go to manager to give us an overview as to the intent of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As discussed with the councillors, we've had a number of meetings with the organisation, with the Mergen Show Society. They have requested that they would like to take over all the buildings at Mergen in their lease area. So it's only in their lease area. There are other buildings outside of their lease area that support all the sporting activities in the PCYC. This group have a long-term plan of actually regenerating the Mergen Showgrounds and actually making application for new funding so they could actually start to rebuild the Mergen Showgrounds and actually have new facilities that are multi-purpose and catering for the future needs of Mergen Show. So they are keen. They're also keen to get on board and start working on site, creating the space for the Rodeo, as the Rodeo generally doesn't fit over the actual sporting grounds anymore, because some of the sporting groups are actually doing a lot of work and top dressing and irrigation over those areas. So the Rodeo doesn't really work well over those higher sort of level sporting facilities. So there is room within the Mergen Showgrounds for that to be catered elsewhere on site. And also that their aim is to take over the buildings. During the storm this week, we have had some storm damage up there with a lot of the electricity poles, and unfortunately some of those electricity poles have come down on top of those buildings in the Show Society area that they're wanting to take on. We will work through our insurance provider. Today we have an on-site inspection to just have a look at the damage and how much damage to those buildings and whether or not we can make an insurance claim for that. But generally the power poles up there are in they're very old, very poor condition. They are timber and they need to be replaced. So they'll be replaced and power will be reconnected. But yeah, we'll need to assess the damage to those existing buildings. But the intent of this is to move forward and allow the Mergen Show Society to take over the space take over the buildings and look at future funding to remove some of those older buildings and replace with purpose-built facilities.
Thank you, Manager. And just to be clear, Council, so what we're voting on here, further to the Manager's comments, is that in accordance with the purposes of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Section 236(2), Council decides by resolution that the exception in the regulation 236(1)(b) applies to Council in the disposal of building assets on lease area C within Lot 7 on SP 217287, other than by tender or auction, to a community organisation, Mergen Pastoral, Agricultural and Horticultural Society Incorporated, because A, it is in the public interest, and B, the disposal is otherwise in accordance with the sound contracting principles. 2, in accordance with Local Government Act 2009, Section 257, to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer of Council the power under Section 262(3) of the Act to negotiate and agree in principle the terms and conditions of a contract for the disposal of the building assets to the community organisation Mergen Pastoral, Agricultural and Horticultural Society Incorporated for approval by Council. Councillor Duff, quick comment before we go to the vote.
I just wanted to congratulate the Mergen Show Society on this initiative. It's supported entirely by the Mergen's Sports Association. It's been a long time coming because there's been issues for many, many years about the rodeo. They're actually running their rodeo at the end of this month, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. Hopefully we'll get lots of councillors there and to support this initiative. But yeah, just really proud of what the Mergen Show Society are doing. And yeah, like I said, all the sports clubs are on board.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. That closes the debate. We will, unless there's anything further from councillors, no further questions as to the motion, as presented and as read, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.1, requesting renewal of the partnership agreement between Council and Visit South Burnett Incorporated, and that is at page 284. And the recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council 1, renew the partnership agreement with Visit South Burnett Incorporated as a tourism organisation partner, and acknowledge that Visit South Burnett Incorporated is a member-based entity with a tourism industry base. 2, support the proposal of Visit South Burnett for destination marketing to the value of $70,000, excluding GST, for the period 1 October 2021 to 30 June 2022, and request an audited financial return on the council monetary contribution to cover the period of funding of the inaugural partnership agreement. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froloff, seconder Councillor Jones. Councillor Froloff to speak first, or other speakers? Councillor Froloff, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to just put it out there that Visit South Burnett has, since we had a few hiccups when they first started, but I think they're really doing well. And as we've had people in the chambers talking about the new pamphlets, and I wish Visit South Burnett and all the committee all the best in further endeavours, and get South Burnett out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you. I fully agree with the recommendation. I would, however, when we first brought this to council, we talked about a workshop, and I know Visit South Burnett have presented their 90-day plan, and I know there'll be following plans. I'm just keen to see council lock in a workshop to decide on the KPIs as part of this agreement, and how we're actually going to measure our success. So I know for various reasons last year that did not occur, and just in terms of moving forward, I really want that clear understanding of our partnership arrangement. So that's just my request, and certainly I'd encourage Mr. CEO, is there any reason why that couldn't occur, or it may even be part of the partnership documents that you've seen, but certainly I would like to have that conversation so we're all on the same page, really set ourselves up for success.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. That's been duly noted by our CEO. We'll get a workshop progressed in relation to KPI establishment.
Mayor, the only question, and just so I've got the councillor's intent, is that a joint workshop, or we do a workshop for us first and then with them?
joint workshop, because certainly we've received a copy of the draft tourism strategy that Visit South Burnett had prepared. I know their committee had prepared that and they had discussed taking that out to the broader tourism industry, and I'm sure they'll have feedback in relation to that I'll be keen to hear. And certainly I think from this council's point of view, with any partnership arrangement, we need to have that open, honest conversation, and certainly I think an opportunity to just discuss where we've been and where we're going and set some clear performance markers moving forward will be important. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I will fully support this, Mr Mayor. I think the Visit South Burnett is the best that I've seen it positioned in the whole time that I've been involved with council and the Visit South Burnett proposal. I'm more than happy. I'm very happy with the new lady that they've employed. I'm very happy with the number of membership numbers that they've got. It's increasing slowly all the time. They're getting the message out there, and I fully support this, and I'm happy for it to progress. Yeah, I'm happy to go through the workshop with the KPIs, but as long as it doesn't hold up the process to enable this organisation to continue moving forward, and happy to fully support this recommendation here today in front of us, resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Other speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and fellow councillors. Yes, I think this is a classic example of support our own backyard. VSB certainly had some teething problems early in the piece that was probably overshadowed by some other incidents, but I think everywhere I go, I hear VSB, and I think they're really starting to put themselves out there and starting to do some great work. I think they'll go out in leaps and bounds, and like I say, being in look after our own backyard with our own backyard. So I fully support this and wish them all the best in their next 6 months. That's for sure. They'll got a lot of work to do, and there's so much going on in the Burnett. It's a little bit of a breath of fresh air from what's happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Just before going to Councillor Freloff to wrap up, if need be, you'll certainly concur with everything that's been said. KPIs, establishment of such is always important when council provides ratepayers funds to provide accountability in relation to such. And I think as Councillor Freloff, Councillor Jones and Councillor Henson have articulated, from what I'm hearing, and certainly agree that VSB are really starting to find their feet, getting some traction. Melanie's doing a great job. Jason's certainly providing the leadership to move the organisation forward, and it's a good time for tourism. And I can't say more than to absolutely agree with what Councillor Henson said. Let's support our industry locally in our backyard. That's really well said. So thanks everyone. Councillor Freloff, anything to wrap up before we go to the vote? Okay, so we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.2 is Southern Queensland. Sorry, Councillor Schumacher.
Mr Mayor, I would like to move that South Burnett Regional Council delegate the Chief Executive Officer to finalise associate membership of Southern Queensland Country Tourism to the value of $40,000 pro rata, $30,000 for the 2021-22 financial year.
Right, thank you. So we'll just get that on screen and then give consideration as per the officer's recommendation number 1. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we have that moved in accordance with recommendation 1. Do we have a mover? A seconder, sorry? Seconder. Councillor Potter. Okay, so we have the motion on screen. Recommendation 1, South Burnett Regional Council delegate the Chief Executive Officer to finalise associate membership of Southern Queensland Country Tourism to the value of $40,000, pro rata $30,000 for the 21-22 financial year. Mr. CEO, could you just give us an overview?
I was going to just explain, Mayor, the pro rata is same as Visit South Burnett. We allocated the two, if I can roll the two into the 9-month funding regime for Visit South Burnett. We did Visit South Burnett at the first quarter review last year and have held to that 12-month period for that. Ideally now, and same with Southern Queensland Country, it would be good to bring them into the actual financial years so that we can deal with them as part of the normal budget process. So if the submission from Southern Queensland Country was 40,000, we're already 1 quarter of the year gone, so that the amount pro rata would be 30 for the next 9 months from 1st of October. So the actual this be passed, council would be going back to Southern Queensland Country Tourism and saying this will be a $30,000 associate membership, not 40, as it would be prorated to bring it into the financial year.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Keen to hear from other councillors, but Councillor Shoemaker first of all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I'm fully supportive of this motion. I think we've been working on tourism and having these discussions for quite some time, and I know Peter Homan has come and presented to council on a number of occasions. As you will see in the report, I believe the pro rata membership of $30,000 is good value. I also believe it's a great opportunity to get our council a seat back at the table, an active seat back at the table. While we have certainly benefited from our relationship with Southern Queensland Country Tourism, we are the only council who is currently not a paying member, and so our level of actual support, of course, is less than what other councils such as Toowoomba and alike are receiving. I do believe when you look at the traditional costs this council was actually spending in economic development in those first budgets when I first came to the table, they were well and truly much more than this. And I do believe when you look at the costs of actually attending some of these trade shows, it's in the vicinity of $15,000 to $20,000 for a stand. And so to hear that we'll actually have active representation and participation in the regional tourism operators, organisations' operations going forward, I think is really important. That bilateral partnership, working together both strategically with our regional tourism organisation being Southern Queensland Country, and on the ground with our industry-led partners being Visit South Burnett, is very important to advance tourism in South Burnett. And I think you'll find that model is actually relied upon in a number of other local governments, just like us. I do believe collaboration is key, and positive working relationships and sharing resources to get the best benefits for our region. I do believe with a partnership with both Visit South Burnett and Southern Queensland Country Tourism, we will achieve just that. I think we'll achieve great things, and I think you will find it's a much smaller, targeted and concentrated investment in tourism outcomes for the South Burnett than what traditionally may have been done before I came to council. So they're my views. I'm fully supportive of this. I think the data and the information that Southern Queensland Country are providing, their relationships and their real ability to support us on the ground will be important and will help drive better outcomes in the South Burnett. Thank you.
Okay, other speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, no, I actually favoured the second recommendation, which was to spend the money locally with, as Councillor Henson said, with Visit South Burnett or on other tourism promotion activities. We've been down the path with Southern Queensland Country before. I think it's something we could review at next year's budget, but I would like to give Visit South Burnett a chance, and if necessary, give them the extra money to support them, and we could review it in June 22. So because, yeah, like I said, I think we're a small fish in a big pond, and I sometimes wonder whether we get value for money with Southern Queensland Country or any of those big regional tourism organisations. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Duff and Councillor Shoemaker. Tourism, as we know, is an important part of our area, that's for sure. I think VSV, and as Councillor Duff has alluded to, if we're going to spend money, spend it in our backyard, and I'm passionate about that. I think South Queensland Country, without a doubt, do a great job. I'm just interested in some of the literature here. SQCT has built a new initiative and consumer-focused website that's designed to convert the dreamers into travellers. Will assist smaller businesses and sell tickets for smaller events. Well, let me assure you, the smaller events in our South Burnett community are doing that themselves now, and the VSB is helping enormously there. I mean, we can go onto any site and get tickets, like the classic example's been doing the Homestead and the Cumbia, the Melbourne Cup races. You go online and you purchase your tickets. That's a wonderful initiative taken by just a couple of our groups in the South Burnett. So I'm fully supportive of the previous Visit South Burnett. With this one, I would, if we were going to direct any money, I'd like to see it directed into our own VSB. So, yeah, I won't be supporting this one at this point in time. But in saying that, at future down the track, I think we can certainly broaden our horizons, Councillor Shoemaker, and see where tourism's going to go. Thank you.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I know we've dealt with Southern Queensland Country Tourism before, but it's a completely different entity now than what it was when we were working with them a few years ago. And I think with the new leadership of Peter Homan, it's going in the right direction. And what they provide to us is data. Now, data is an extremely valuable commodity in this day and age. And you know, so I'm actually in agreement with Councillor Shoemaker on this one. I believe this is something we should follow through on. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Here's a surprise for you, Councillor Duff. I actually agree with you. Yeah, I support the second option. Let this year continue through. Review it at the end of the financial year, and in response to Councillor Potter's comments around data, my concerns are if we've just agreed to support Visit South Burnett, and Councillor Hanson and everybody else has acknowledged that we should spend our money, ratepayer money in our local area, and give these guys an opportunity because they should know our area and tourism better than us and better than anybody else. So I'm just concerned about us duplicating if we fund Southern Queensland Country Tourism and we're funding Visit South Burnett. I believe that Visit South Burnett should be working with Southern Queensland Country Tourism and utilising the money that we've already given to them as support to get that data. That data should be available to Visit South Burnett, because if we get it, we're only going to pass it on to Visit South Burnett. So I just think that we've got maybe duplicating things. So I'm happy to support Visit South Burnett fully, as we've done, but at this stage I'm not happy or not willing to support the 30,000 to Southern Queensland Country Tourism. I'll support the review at the end of the financial year. So thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Jones. We'll go to Councillor Shoemaker for right of reply shortly. Councillor Froelich, did you have anything you wanted to add at this stage before we move on? Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Duff, Jones and Councillor Henson. When we were with Southern Country Queensland Tourism, they had a very small footprint and it only went up to one side of the Bunyas. So the rest of the South Burnett Regional Council had missed out of being put out there. Where I see Visit South Burnett is starting to do that, starting to put the whole South Burnett across our region and getting it out there and promoting. They're going to these events out the Gold Coast, Brisbane, wherever, and I know that they've got a new manager, new boss, and I support the second motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just one question, Mr CEO. My understanding is that Tourism Events Queensland or the Queensland Government do fund Southern Queensland Country Tourism to provide support to our region. I know it might not necessarily do what they're proposing here, but they do receive funding from the Queensland Government for us. Is that correct?
That's correct. They receive I call it a base, I'm not totally over their funding model, but they receive a base funding from the state government to cover the region, and then they're a membership base from the member councils within the region for the added services. So there is we've written, actually past 2 years now, we've written a letter of support for the state government base funding. They need that acknowledgement from each council. Happy to do so. I would hate to see them miss out on that. And then they have membership fees from their individual councils. But yeah, short answer is yes, they do receive some funding from the state.
Mr CEO. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Shoemaker for right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, and certainly appreciate the conversation in the chamber. I think it's very important that everyone understands Southern Queensland Country Tourism has actually been actively supporting and working with Visit South Burnett. I'm not sure you completely might not see those outcomes, but they do. They regularly talk to each other, regularly support and work together around marketing campaigns and the like. The data that we receive is all free. And if you read my regional development and tourism reports, you'll actually note that it's actually often tabled in this very chamber. The sentiment scores and the like is all free, all available, all publicly available. And Visit South Burnett actually received that data, and Councillor Potter's absolutely right. It does allow you to target your marketing. And when I have heard the Mayor talk about international travel opportunities when they're available, domestic travel opportunities, Southern Queensland Country Tourism is actually the entity that will support Visit South Burnett to put the South Burnett on the map and achieve those outcomes. Visit South Burnett has a very local focus and absolutely is doing a fabulous job promoting and supporting industry to work together. But I believe if we're really serious about industry-led tourism outcomes and we're really serious about bolstering tourism in our region, we actually need a bilateral agreement between Visit South Burnett, our local partners on the ground. We need an agreement with Southern Queensland Country Tourism, who has a table at the many levels of government departments and alike, a seat at the table. And we need to be working together. So I believe that the $70,000 that we give Visit South Burnett, as we've just moved, is excellent value, and I appreciate the work they do. And the $30,000 I'm proposing, which would mean a $100,000 investment from this council in industry-led tourism outcomes, really isn't a far reach when you look at our entire budget and what we invest in other areas. So I'm fully supportive. I think we need both partnerships, and I think we need to give Visit South Burnett an actual opportunity to have a much and council a larger or a larger presence. At the moment, we're competing with bigger councils who are putting in much more money than this and getting outcomes, and we're just not getting the same level of attention. So yes, while we do definitely get some support, I think this partnership arrangement would just strengthen that and really bolster tourism and set us up for the future. And I know I've been talking about this for quite some time, but I certainly respect the views of my colleagues. I just completely disagree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Potter, Councillor Shoemaker. Those against? Councillor Jones, Councillor Dove, Councillor Henson, Councillor Fraloff and Councillor Otto. So the motion has been defeated. And so, Councillor Dove.
So, Mr Mayor, could I move the second one? Is that?
You can, Mr CEO? Yep, proceed.
Yes, I'll move that South Burnett Regional Council notes the proposal put forward by Southern Queensland Country Tourism and advise that for the 2021-22 financial year, Council will not be making a financial contribution to the Association for membership. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Do we have a seconder? Yep, Councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Duff first.
Mayor, I think it's already been discussed, but yeah, keen to support our local Visit South Burnett, give them a chance and review this in 2022. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to have it on the record that I absolutely agree in supporting Visit South Burnett, but I do believe to really achieve the ambitious tourism objectives that we would like to see, outcomes here in our region, we need a relationship with both. So I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Fraloff.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question, if we're getting all that data and everything for free, why are we paying Southern Queensland Country Tourism? No, but if we were, we're getting it free now.
I must admit that is a question I had going through my mind. If the data's available under what they're already funded to provide, why would we pay extra to get data? I mean, I think it's a fair question, and councillors keen to hear the answer. Thank you.
A membership is so much more than just the data. A paid membership gets you a seat at the table. It actually offers you an opportunity for someone from the South Burnett to be on Southern Queensland Country Tourism's board. It also offers you an opportunity, if you talk to our colleagues in the likes of Western Downs or Toowoomba, the benefits their region get because they sit at some of those tables and they actually make a financial contribution is so much greater than what we're receiving. So there is much more to this partnership with a regional tourism organisation like Southern Queensland Country Tourism than data. And I completely respect the learnings of the past. I completely see that at that time, the right thing to do was to withdraw. But there's been enormous change in the entity since then. And I do believe to really bolster tourism-led outcomes, we need a seat at the table and we need to be working with both. And if you look at just recently, Bundaberg Regional Council, my goodness, the work they've been doing, because they've had just that open line of conversation, they've made the investment. And really, in the scheme of things, this is a rather minor investment to have a go at something different, to reinvigorate that relationship. And I guess we won't really know what we could be getting if we're not ever making a contribution. So that's my view.
Thank you. Councillor Henson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question, Councillor Shoemaker. In becoming a member, you stated that we get a position on the board. Is it correct in saying that you will only get a position on the board when you pay the full fee of $62,000? That being the case, that's double what the proposal was to start with, just to get a seat on the board.
It's an example, and Peter Homan has been in this chamber. You've all met with him, you've all talked to him. There's been plenty of opportunity to ask these very questions. Probably turn to CEO Mark. He's certainly seen all of the information as well. I really do feel this is the right thing to do. So there is much more than that, Councillor Henson, and I guess I'm much more comfortable in going forth with a pro rata membership of $30,000 because it's dipping your toe in the water and actually seeing what there is. I'm not suggesting a full membership at this point in time, but I am suggesting a relationship with both entities. And I think you'll find to really get traction in the tourism space, you need both. I've been to some of Southern Queensland Country's tourism industry-led events, and they're extraordinary. You get to talk to anyone from the department of, any department. You also get to talk to entrepreneurs and people in this area and learn from them. And I can see our tourism industry could really do so much with that valuable insight. You get access to reports like the mountain biking report. There are so many things, and we don't necessarily see them. We don't see them. We get the base level because we're not paying anything. So certainly, CEO Mark, if I know there's much more to it, and I would certainly appreciate anything you got to contribute.
Thanks, Councillor. To answer the Councillor's question, the associate membership would invite us to the board meetings, whilst we would not be, my understanding of certainly in conversations with Peter, at the moment, if we were to attend a board meeting, we'd be invited as a guest for that component and then shuffled on our way. An associate membership would bring us to the table as an observer. The full fee, you're correct in that regard. Full voting rights wouldn't occur until the full fee was paid. But yeah, so you would be invited and you would get the paperwork and the information, and you just wouldn't have a vote until you paid the full fee.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Are you comfortable with that response, Councillor Henson? Clarifies it? Yep.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor and CEO.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I hear everything that's been said. I just had a look back. The Visit South Burnett funding expires on 30th of June 2022. We've got a budget to put together. I will support this, quite happy with that. I'm happy to let Visit South Burnett run, see where they go, and let them provide some feedback or whatever. The KPIs, the workshop that's been proposed for KPIs, I'm sure we can put stuff in there that's built around all that sort of stuff. So we have had Peter Homans in here, and I've got to be honest, hasn't filled me with confidence. Hasn't filled me with confidence from what I've heard. I've heard it all before. I've seen all sorts of conversations over a long period of time. And yes, Southern Queensland Country Tourism is a different beast now. We've got a different leader. I'm not saying that they won't be a good thing in 2022 from 1st of July on. And I'm not standing here now saying that I will not go back and revisit it. Happy to revisit it, but I'm not willing to support it at this stage, and I'm happy to support this motion that we've got in front. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. I might just look to wrap up, then we can go back to Councillor Duff to write a reply. So as the RTO, Southern Queensland Country Tourism are a government-funded body. Visit South Burnett are all private sector industry, driving industry, and I think that's what I like about them. We had serious discussions, CEO Mark and I, at the Regional Planning Forum in Brisbane this week with the other mayors and CEOs from around the region, and there was a lot of talk there about the Wide Bay Burnett Regional Plan for tourism. So I think there's a lot of work still to happen in that space over the next 12 months. We're not sure where Webrock's going. That's still to be determined. And the other thing is, I mean, I think we've got a very supportive minister. Minister Hinchcliffe's actually coming to the South Burnett, and I was going to let everyone know later in the week once we confirm details, and he's keen to have lunch with the councillors and visit South Burnett, because he wants to start working directly with them in terms of what their vision is for the region as the minister. And not to say that he's not going to continue to support the RTO, and of course he will, but he's also keen to make sure that he's talking to people on the ground, in the community, out in the townships of the South Burnett. So there certainly is opportunity there, Council. From what I'm hearing around the room, I think there is, in my view, a compelling argument that we give VSB a good run till 30 June, and let's see where we're at. Let's not turn our back on SQCT, but maybe let's just give VSB a good run. That's my view, until 30 June, and then we can revisit this. Seems to be what the views are. I tend to support that. So anyway, having said that, Councillor Duff, back to you then for final comments.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I absolutely support this recommendation, but I also think that as everyone's been crying out for this to be industry-driven tourism, and so we've got Visit South Burnett, they've got skin in the game. I think that conversation with our relationship with Southern Queensland Country needs to come from them in any case. Like it needs to be, as Councillor Jones said before, that could be their call, whether they think that we need to work with Southern Queensland Country, or whether perhaps as we move forward, Visit South Burnett could hold that membership for Southern Queensland Country rather than council. Because I think the more that we can make it industry-driven with people with skin in the game, the happier that they will be and the happier our ratepayers will be. So I think it's what our community has been crying out for a very long time, to let the tourism operators manage tourism in our region. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Jones, Councillor Duff, Councillor Henson, Councillor Froloff and Councillor Otto in favour. Those against? Councillor Potter and Councillor Shoemaker. Motion has been carried, 5 votes to 2. Thank you all. Let's move on now to 17.1, Mr CEO, which is the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report at page 291. And the recommendation is the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you. Really pleasing to see so many great projects on the horizon for us here in the South Burnett. I just had a question for CEO Mark. From what I've read through the reports provided and the attachments, there doesn't seem to be any bottlenecks or barriers or anything that we should be aware of to any of these development applications, and I just wanted that confirmed for the chamber.
Oh, good question. Do I know of any? No. Could one come up next month? Yes. But at this point in time, do I know of any? No. Thank you. The disruption to the building has caused a little bit of kerfuffle in a couple of things while we relocate staff as the works have been done. So, but and certainly the timeline in the changing of the reporting for LGAQSA conferences, certainly. So you have those little things that come along all so often. But other than that, I think we're chugging along all right at the moment, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 17.2 is the Delegated Authority reports at 293, and the recommendation is that the Delegated Authority report be received. We have a mover. Councillor Froloff, seconder, Councillor Potter. Thank you. Speakers? No? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll now go to page 447.
Mr. Mayor, if we may, just when we go into closed session, and for Councillor Shoemaker, this wouldn't be a conflict because it would be just procedural, but my apologies far in advance due to, or if you're talking about bottlenecks, a range of issues with the 19.3, but it just would be proper to have a procedural resolution that 19.3 be discussed today, given it's a late report. So, No, it's purely procedural. It has nothing to do with it. But yeah, and again, I do apologise to the chamber for the lateness of getting the documentation to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. CEO. We'll note that Councillor Shoemaker has left the chamber, and I'll move a procedural resolution that item 19.3, South Bennett Community Hospital matter, be addressed today on the agenda. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fryloff, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. So we have a recommendation that Council considers the confidential reports listed in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012, 19.1, submission on funding proposal for unpaid rates in under provision 254JD. 19.2, update on the management of Mergen Jubilee Swimming Pool, 254J-G. So D on the first one, G on 19.2, and on 19.3, thank you, Mr. CEO, 19.3, South Bennett Community Hospital Foundation Limited, Section 254JG, in relation to the application of the regulation to moving those items into confidential. Do we have a mover for such? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Fryloff. Speakers, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. I'll now call the meeting, open meeting closed. We'll go into confidential at 12:01 p.m. Thank you all. Right, we'll now call the meeting reopened at 12:55 p.m. 19.1 on the agenda is in relation to unpaid rates, and we'll now have Councillor Henson and Councillor Potter leave the room while we deal with 19.1. Thank you. The recommendation is that the report be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Fryloff, thank you. Second, Councillor Duff. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Drag them back in. Thank you. Okay. Councillors Henson and Potter have returned to the meeting as we move on to 19.2, which is an update on the management of the Mergen Jubilee Swimming Pool. Recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council review the contractual obligations of Belgravia Health and Leisure Group Incorporated to manage and operate Mergen Jubilee Swimming Pool. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second to Councillor Henson. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Shoemaker is now leaving the room due to a declarable conflict of interest as we move on to 19.3, which is the South Bennett Community Hospital Foundation Limited. The recommendation has two elements as presented on screen. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Fryloff. Seconder, Councillor Potter. Thank you. Questions? Speakers? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll now call Councillor Shoemaker back. Test. Okay, we've now dealt with all the items on the agenda, so now move to close the meeting at 12:58 p.m. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you, Lynelle, for your great work, and to councillors and staff. Have a great rest of day. Thank you.